Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of HR Tech Chat. And with us today, we have Nate Smith, who is founder and CEO of Lever, which is a West Coast based talent acquisition technology company. And I'm really looking forward to this conversation. Welcome, Nate, to the podcast.
Thanks, Brent. I'm excited to chat.
Yeah, me too. We've spoken before. I think the first time we spoke was last summer, maybe around this time, almost exactly. That would be funny if it were exactly a year from then. But anyway, I'll go back in my calendar. I'm a calendar hoarder, so I'll know for sure after this episode. But anyways, great to be speaking with you again. Thank you for joining the chat. And we have a few things we want to talk about today. Just around, well, let's start here. I mean, there's so much to talk about, and I think we'll cover a lot of ground, but where I'd like to start is I'm very curious of what your take is as a leader of a company whose technology is focused specifically and whose mission is focused specifically in helping employers find particularly high value talent for upper echelon roles, this sort of thing. I'm just curious what your take is in general on the talent market right now, coming out of well, at least for some parts of the world, or at least hopefully we're coming out of this pandemic. What's going on with the talent market, the war for talent right now? We hear this thing about the great resignation. Is that real? I wish I'd come up with that term. It's an awesome term. I wish I'd come up with it. I think it was an A&M, Texas A&M University person who came up with it. But anyways, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, there is a lot happening, and as you alluded to, it's not necessarily that it's all exactly the same in every geography around the world. But I would say that there's a global trend that's been going on for at least a decade now of it being harder and harder for companies to fill talent in key positions in particular.
Mm,
But even, most recently, we've been seeing this as well with volume roles too. A lot of companies talking about just having a shortage of talent in general. And so you mentioned like Lever, we've always been inspired by helping, in particular, knowledge workers and kind of high value talent hiring. But it also is the case that a lot of companies, they need to do a mix, right? So you're actually thinking about hiring in a whole variety of locations, which might have different local talent markets, different roles, which are going to have different characteristics. And, we really want Lever to be a platform for all of those different types of hiring. But often the tip of the spear is what are those roles that are holding you back from being
mm,
able to hit your strategic plans for the year, right? So a lot of times executive teams, they come together or even get input from the board and they say, our goal for this year is we're going to move into this market, or our goal for this year is we're going to release this new product that has these capabilities and we think that's the step forward for our market, or our product's great but where we need to double down is marketing or sales.
mm.
And so executive teams are coming to talent organizations with plans, OKRs, what have you. And talent organizations are often finding themselves in a position of being in a bit of a crunch. Traditionally, the crunch is, hey, we're experiencing, we've got these plans. We need to figure out how to help. We're also busy. Our team needs to be bigger too. So how
Yeah.
are we going to make this all happen? And now with your point around the kind of topic of the Great Resignation, that's just making that even more challenging if you're at the same time losing people that you really rely on to make that foundation of that plan work. So if you have to think about not only where do we want to go, but also do we have the existing kind of foundation to hit our normal growth plans? You can see how it can become really quite a stressful thing to try and manage all those different competing concerns at the same time.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think there is a lot going on. I think the Great Resignation, it is something that is a reality for a lot of folks. We've had folks that are It's been over a year now for a lot of people where they've had a bit of a pause in terms of what they were used to, and so now they're coming out of that, and that's a moment of reflection. Times of change are always moments of reflection, and this is a really important time for organizations to engage with their people.
Mm,
And I often say that there's a lot of talk in the HR industry of engagement and has been for some time. And it's a really important topic. But a lot of times, just understanding that you have an engagement problem isn't necessarily enough, because what do you do
mm,
next?
yeah,
And I think talent acquisition, interestingly enough, is often the best tangible solution to an engagement problem. If you can
mm,
find someone a new role inside the company that is going to reinvigorate them, get them excited about the future, that's really the ticket to fully solving an engagement problem rather than just delaying it.
mm,
And a lot of companies we're speaking with, a lot of our customers are talking about internal mobility, being able to reskill or upskill their talent, leadership training for a lot of folks. These are all really hot topics within the HR industry at large, but we're seeing with higher growth companies, it really amplified. And that's
right.
something that I would say every company would be wise to pay attention to is, are we keeping the folks on our team that are most critical to hitting our goals?
Mm.
Not just thinking about the new folks we're bringing in, but the existing folks we have, and are they still challenged? Are they still engaged? Can we find them an opportunity inside the organization?
Yeah. Oh man, just so many just nuggets in there that you shared, and I think you're right. I obviously, and I agree with you. This idea that, hiring isn't, talent acquisition isn't just, well, hiring isn't just external, right? There is
Right.
internal hiring as well. And talent acquisition isn't just this, even though it is a point, it's a point solution that has persisted in terms of being that that very high level sort of what's the word? It's an organization that has any kind of complexity in its talent acquisition needs, it's not necessarily going to be able to make do with sort of an off-the-shelf recruiting talent acquisition ATS solution that comes with any number of the sort of the large HCM suites out there. You really need
Mhm.
to go out there and find a best, the best of breed, that term that's been around for a long time. So, and that's been my opinion for years. Is I think talent acquisition just persists, and that's because it's such a complex thing. Um, and the fact that that it also needs to integrate very seamlessly, in my opinion, with learning, with
Mhm.
onboarding, um, all these sorts of things. And what you mentioned about engagement is really important. You think back to any kind of role that you've started that you're really excited about. I mean, in
Yeah.
my opinion, an employee, and this is up to debate, but in my opinion, an employee is at least potentially um, the most productive when they're or wants to be the most productive when they're brand new in their role, right? Because there's that newness, is that excitement, and so the faster you can onboard them, the fast and the better match they can be at the very outset of their relationship with the organization, the better. And I guess that's where I want to might be a good segue right there. And from what I'm hearing is you're it sounds to me like Lever is helpful with helping organizations find that the purple squirrel, so to speak. I heard that term for the first time, interestingly enough, just a couple of years ago. But I was called the purple squirrel actually,
Well,
run,
that's a good compliment, Brent. You should take that. It's a badge of pride. Good stickers.
I know, I know. Yeah, yeah. After I was like, oh yeah, I guess yeah. I should feel. But anyways, I'm not trying to toot my own horn here, but yeah, the idea of a purple squirrel. So it sounds like you folks help organizations find purple squirrels.
Yeah, I'd say it's important to have squirrels of all colors, but you certainly need some purple ones. And that's often the situation we see with customers is there's some role that's kind of the tip of the spear. It's that key hire, critical hire. People have a million words for this, but it's
Mm,
all kind of the same idea. It's like, if we don't hire this person, we can't even get this initiative off the ground. And at the same time, you also do need a certain volume of roles. And then how do you manage those two realities at the same time? So I think it's not just that we help with hiring some very particular individuals, but the fact that we do that in addition to helping the company scale as a holistic package in one place. That's actually really the key. And the way we've always talked about that is this idea of, which we're now excited to see more and more people have embraced, of this idea of the talent acquisition suite, where
Mm,
it is an ATS, but it's also a CRM, and it's one holistic solution. It's not something you have to piece together, but the kind of, you get this offering straight from us, and it works out of the box because everyone actually needs that these days. And something Lever also has is Lever Nurture, which is a big part of finding the purple squirrels. So, what we see successful organizations doing today is a mixture. They're going out and they're sourcing to find the talent that is really particular that they need, in addition to needing to handle high volume of applicants for other roles. And maybe they're also doing some amount of something in the middle, like a referral program, or maybe they host events or go to universities, or a whole variety of other different sources of hire. And it's not one or the other. In fact, it's kind of a portfolio approach. You have to do all these different things together,
mm,
and other systems haven't really been built for that kind of mixed mode or multi-channel approach to talent acquisition. They've been very much focused on one workflow, and it's always been our idea that, similar to kind of the sales CRM market, you look at Salesforce. Salesforce is a system, and through the Salesforce products, you can bring together a whole different variety of things with your customer relationships in one place, right? So with Salesforce, of course, you can do your initial kind of sales outreach, but also down the road, you need to do upsells or renewals, or you want to bring in more data from your marketing technology stack, and you want to bring in data from your customer support organization. And as we've seen, over time, that creates a lot of value. I think that talent acquisition is going through a similar technology revolution that we've seen in sales and marketing.
mhm,
And there's a ton of really exciting things happening because we're really seeing a lot of technology evolution, enabling people to do all these different things, while still, having, you need a lot of automation to be able to handle this, while still being able to have a really good candidate experience where you build really great relationships with the candidates you're speaking with.
mhm.
And to do that, you need technology platforms to help you be able to do all of that at scale.
Yeah, I love the idea of a CRM, right? And I mean,
Mhm.
it's even is the same acronym, which I think
Yeah,
is
it
so.
works. It works magically well for some reason.
Yeah, it does. And already thinking, uh, yeah, you reach out to somebody who might be a very high value person. They just have a
Mhm.
really, a great, it says collection of skills and capabilities and whatever. And maybe they weren't right for the organization right then,
Yes.
but maybe they'd be right later. And and if you're not, if you have a system in place that doesn't really, the left hand isn't speaking to the right. This is actually my right hand. The left hand isn't speaking to the right hand, right? For the viewers, anyway. Eh, you may have to like go through that whole process all over again. Maybe not even get to that person again, right? And maybe you're not doing
Exactly.
anything in the interim to keep them sort of engaged even just a little bit, so that you're on the periphery of their thinking at least, so that, oh yeah, those guys, yeah, I'll talk to them again, or something like that. So that whole candidate relationship management concept is not lost on me at all. I mean, that's super important. And how do you think it helps? So just taking a step back, I was having a conversation with somebody else a while back, and few months ago, and it was around this idea, and we all know this, marketing went through this, I think about 10, 15 years ago, and HR, when I say HR, I mean HCM, the whole thing,
Mhm.
enchilada, talent acquisition, everything.
Right.
You're going through it now, this measurement thing where, it's really
Exactly.
measured, right? So how does a CRM candidate relationship management and like candidate lead nurturing and all this stuff you're talking about. How does that factor into talent acquisition professionals, maybe measuring their success
Mhm.
differently or more dynamically or better?
Yeah, that's a great topic and something that we're really engaged on and working and partnering with a lot of our customers to help develop best practices for their organizations. Because, as you said, it is in a lot of cases something that the industry is evolving in, and so this is an area where we find that it's really important for us, in fact, to really engage and partner with our customers to figure out how can we measure that company's goals. We can provide a lot of best practices out of the box, but then also following that through with um, in the implementation process, as well as down the road, making sure that we're able to see the results of all that effort that the talent acquisition team is putting in. And a lot of times what people are looking to answer starts with really fundamental questions. A lot of times, when you are going through a big transition to mature, an interesting thing that we've observed time and time again is that the first thing you need to do is not add more complexity, but rather simplify.
Mm,
This is something you see oftentimes with companies as they go through their growth evolution too. Is you start as a small company, you get a bit bigger, you add more complexity. You get a bit bigger, you add more complexity. And there comes a point where you see, wow, like in order to be more predictable, we actually have to simplify so we can get our hands around the
mm,
whole situation and we can understand everything that's going on. And then you can kind of layer on top of that again. So, when we're talking about being effective with some of these ideas like nurturing, I always say, let's start with basics, right? Let's go back
mm.
to the basics. This often also works in sales and marketing, by the way.
Yeah.
And one of the very first things you want to look at is, do we have a shared understanding of our methodology, like our
Yeah.
process? But not just process from the perspective of like rules, right? Actually, really understanding what are the different steps? Why are those the steps? What are we looking to achieve at those different steps? What do they all mean?
Mhm,
So that certainly applies to the interviewing pipeline. It also applies to objectives around, say, sourcing. If you're going to
mhm,
say, hey, we want to be able to move away from spending so much money on outside agencies. We think we should be able to hire more roles ourselves. You need to set measurable goals around that, and be able to attribute that activity that your team does to outcomes.
mhm,
So it's really important that, to your question on analytics, that there is one true system of record. What we've seen in the market really gets in people's way is when they have a separate CRM from an ATS, because it's difficult to connect those two together in terms of understanding what is all that top of funnel activity ultimately for. Like, how are we going to measure whether that actually had impact down the road? Because a lot of times those systems don't connect the dots until someone's already actively interviewing. But most of the work you're doing is before that. So we think having one system of record is a big part of it, and that's
mhm,
why we have built Lever as one software platform, one interface that really does both things, and has separate pipelines for lead nurturing and applicants and people who are interviewing in the process. But
mhm.
it's all within one interface. It's all within one place, and you can see all those different job opportunities that people are being considered for in
Mhm.
one single view, and they all are connected when it comes to analytics.
That's interesting. So, and we're getting into a little bit of the weeds here, and
Yeah.
but it's interesting to me, and I'm not a computer software engineer either. At some point I'll say, okay, let's. But anyways, is it a single application? Is it essentially a
Yeah,
single app? Okay, all right,
absolutely.
okay. So it's a single database and a Single.
Exactly.
Okay. I mean, I was just kind of thinking, conceptualizing it in my head. Again, not being a computer programmer, I'm thinking to myself, yeah, it can,
I mean,
it,
really, all you need to know is all the data's in one place as opposed to being in a bunch of different places.
well,
That's
yeah,
really the
that's the
whole point.
thing. Right. But at the same time, even let's put it this way, even somebody who's not a computer programmer can see that. I mean, I can't imagine trying to integrate a separate CRM with this with an ATS. I mean, that just I think it would just not be worth the hassle even. I mean,
Yeah, unfortunately, that's kind of where things started, and so it's hard to sometimes kind of go from thinking about, hey, we've always done it this way to a new way of doing it, and that's why we've always thought about in the workflows, in Lever, it honestly feels like you're just using an ATS or you're just using
mm,
a CRM. It just happens to be one tool, right? And so
yeah.
you don't have to be a techno whiz to understand it. It just works.
That's good. It's like when I buy a car, it just works.
Yeah, don't
um,
think about
yeah, yeah,
it.
yeah, best not to. What's interesting though? Now the semantics are super interesting to me right now. It seems to me that these terms, applicant tracking system or candidate relationship management system, especially applicant tracking system, it seems to me
Mhm.
that that was just a term that sort of organically developed because that's what we knew how to do, or that's where we
Yeah.
started doing it first. And I mean, have we sort of outgrown the idea of an applicant tracking system?
Yes, the answer is yes. I mean, the term comes from this idea of a workflow, right? So the workflow is still relevant. The workflow is someone hears about your job, maybe through a job site or classifieds of some kind, and then they come to your job site, they apply, and you take that new application, review it, and then bring them into the interview process, like we
Mm,
all know. Um, and that's absolutely still something people do. So it's still a very relevant workflow. But the reality is that it doesn't describe what modern recruiting is really like, because that's just one of many different things. Sourcing is also a critical element to hiring. Referrals are a critical element to hiring, and they might be active or passive. You might have someone say, like, hey, this person I know wants to apply. And that's a little bit more like your ATS workflow. But you might have someone say, well, I really like this person. We worked with them before. I don't know if they'd want a new job, but I would love to work with them again. Let's try and go get them.
mm,
And so that's a little bit more like sourcing, right?
yeah.
And this is all happening all at the same time. And you've got recruiters who are doing a lot of these different activities at the same time. You might have some specialization, perhaps, but typically recruiters find that at different points in time, they're doing different kinds of hiring workflows. And ultimately, that kind of points to the fact that it no longer makes sense to call the ATS the system of record, because it's just one of many types of hiring activities. So when we talk about the category, and we've started to see others really adopt this, we really think of it as it is a talent acquisition suite. That is kind
Okay.
of the descriptor of the software in the most
Yeah.
simple terms possible. And ATS is just one workflow in that talent acquisition platform.
Yeah. Yeah. That certainly seems to me to be the right direction to go. And And I'm sure, somebody out there is trying to think of another term other than talent acquisition suite. I mean, it's definitely
It has
moving
been tried, but at this point, Gartner wrote up a report, and so we'll probably all
uh,
just be like, good enough.
yeah, I know. Same thing with employee experience, this,
Yeah.
Josh very important concept
Yeah.
that, Josh Bersin came up with, and
Yes.
now we are talking about it, and it's definitely a move in the right direction, but I would love to see, what's the next and I don't know what it is, but I'd love to see what is that next concept's gonna take employee experience to the next level, at least semantically. I don't know. We don't have to get into that right now necessarily. Um, uh one thing that's interesting to me is, um, so if let's say you're an organization and you're unfortunate enough to be contending with or dealing with maybe an archaic ATS, right?
Mhm.
And but it's, it's a sunk cost. It's there, and then maybe you have some other systems that you're using for your talent acquisition as well.
Mhm.
I'm gonna stop short of saying maybe you have a candidate relationship management system in place too, because if you have an old ATS, you probably don't have a CRM in place. But there's sort of a so it'd be tough thinking about how you would quantify, how would you measure the elimination of that system and the replacement of it with a, we'll call it a talent acquisition suite, right?
Mhm.
Which which is the ATS and the
Mhm.
CRM all on one application, is basically a much richer sort of ecosystem for engaging and managing potentially incoming talent. Okay, so now you have, so there's a lot of potential upside there, right?
Mhm.
But it's to me it seems, well, let me ask a question, I guess. How do you go to a company and say, look, um, this would be a lot better for you? What is
Sure.
how do you, I guess, what's the pitch? And I can think of many. I'm just curious. I have a couple ideas I'll share in a moment.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'd love to hear your ideas. That's always useful. But um, truthfully, it's a partnership. When you're engaging with a customer who's looking to modernize their tech stack, it's almost always for some reason. Like at the end of the day, there's some sort of business motivation. Maybe you're going through a digital transformation
Mm,
and your business is evolving from being much more about producing physical process products to more digital products, or maybe the way that you're going through the process of um, making things is changing really radically and you need different kinds of talent in your organization, or you're marketing through different channels and you need really different kinds of talent. So there's not a one size fits all business
mm,
case because it's very specific to the organization and where they are on the maturity curve of understanding ultimately, hey, here's where we are, and there's no right or wrong, like that. It's just a point, it's just a state, and
mm,
we have a goal to be here, and that's something that at Lever we really engage on kind of a case by case basis with our customers to partner with them and help them to build a strategy to get them from where they are to where they want to go.
mhm,
So I certainly wouldn't start with something like you know universal. I would actually start with something that's very connected to the business problems, the positive outcomes that people might be able to achieve.
mhm,
And then, honestly, part of making the business case, recruiters and talent
mhm,
acquisition folks and people in HR and talent operations are probably really excited to put in place something more modern. So that's not usually too much of an uphill battle, but there could be other resistance internally. Maybe people are saying, hey, I'm not sure if this is a priority. And usually,
mhm,
how we approach that is by equipping the folks that are excited to make a change with a story around what could be possible, but also what can we avoid, what are the possible things that could go wrong if we don't change,
uh,
and what does that look like,
mhm,
and will this help to avoid that, because a lot of times that's a lot more real and concrete to folks who you need to build a business case with, is why is this necessary. A lot of times it's to avoid some sort of negative outcome that's possible if you don't invest.
risk mitigation, right?
Exactly.
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah,
So it's a little bit of both.
yeah, that's interesting. So you kind of went where I was thinking, a rendition of what I was thinking. Just it
Yeah. Now,
seems
what are
to
your ideas? Maybe I have something to learn from you, Brent.
I don't know. I don't know if I have too much of a crazy idea here, but I get more of an observation. I think is this idea that when you have this sort of clunky bad situation in place for your talent acquisition from a technology standpoint, there's a lot of there's not just a lot of inefficiencies there. I mean, you can definitely make the case, a business case for a reduction in labor expenditure, faster KPIs, and this sort of time to fill and all this kind of stuff. right. But there's also sort of a lost upside benefit to the organization. So,
Hmm.
you very well may, as an organization in that situation, you're almost certainly missing out on finding top talent who would come into the organization and bring you to the next level and
Exactly.
maybe lead to X amount of additional revenue or whatever it is, right? There's no knowing what that number, what you cannot quantify. It's some potentially large amount that you never realized because you have that situation that you're dealing with, right? So that's kind of where I was going with is, there's so much more to the potential financially quantifiable benefit eventually to the organization that makes this leap and decides, we are going to digitally transform our talent
Hmm.
acquisition ecosystem. And so, to kind of bring this full circle to what you were talking about, is it sounds to me that it's really important for that. Well, let's put it this way. A com I think an organization really needs to be in a place where, like you said, it understands already. It's already reached the conclusion on its own volition, on its own, that,
Right.
yeah, we're going through a digital transformation. We wanna move to the next level with our technology and all this kind of stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, the advice I would give to a lot of talent acquisition professionals, and of course, this is all situational, but if we were to kind of summarize, would be something to the effect of really leaning into empathy. I mean, it might sound a little bit
Mm,
squishy, but I think it's always the most effective way to engage with other people is
mm,
to start with what do they care about, what is their motivation here, and how can I help them to be successful?
mm,
Like don't think about, are they going to like me? Are they going to think my plans are good? Think about what makes them look good.
mm,
And so a lot of times talent acquisition leaders are in charge of these decisions, but there's a lot of other folks in the organization that care immensely about the outcomes.
mm,
And if you're able to make a strong case for, hey, if we're able to do this, here's what I've heard from you, you really care about.
yeah,
You want to expand our team in this way, or maybe change geographies or what have you,
mm,
bring in these new skills. Here's why I see this as a solution to that. And here's how we'll be able to concretely measure it as we go. And that really gives people the assurance that there is a plan, and also that's kind of doing the work of starting to build that concrete positive potential that you talked about. Once you can break it down into goals, maybe you can say, let's start bringing in talent that we just don't have. And when we
mhm,
do that, we'll be able to do these new things that maybe makes a new line of business or it just increases our efficiency. And the possible outcome could be this. And that's something we can measure. So I think it kind of comes full circle back to the conversation we had about being data driven and measurement. This is often how one makes the case for marketing programs. And I think there's a
mm,
lot to learn from that. When you're saying, let's go ahead and let's spend a bunch of money on sharing our brand story, or maybe advertising in this particular channel, doing a partnership with these other folks and sharing revenue with them. A lot of times you're talking about how, like, what the potential of that is
mm,
before you've even done it, and then you want to measure to see whether in real life that that the practice meets the plan that you put forth.
y-
And so that's where I would start is really understand the other leaders in the organization and what they're looking to achieve and what's important to them, and then really craft a story around how a technology investment, and also coming with it often is some investment from the recruitment team side as well,
mm,
can really support that, and how it can be concretely measured. So these are things we commonly, really partner with our customers in crafting as we're thinking about, even just, is this system the right fit for you, and going into the implementation and ultimately using it day to day.
yeah. It just seems to be essential to have that, well, the recruiting team, it seems that you're equipping the recruiting team with too is an ability to be a little bit more visionary for the organization, to be a little bit more
Exactly.
strategic for them to, right? And I imagine a
You can really
recruiting
flip
team.
the script. A lot of times recruiters are they feel like they're the last ones to know. This is a pretty common thing.
Yeah.
They're like, wow, you've already made a whole plan and decided how many people we're hiring and how much money we're going to spend on it. And you haven't even talked to us like about whether that's possible. And, flip the script, right? Like have the recruiting team can do so much to say, let us help you strategize. Let us help you to tell you what's possible that you might have never thought about before, and kind of really change from being an organization that's just supporting. I think supporting is really important. There's nothing wrong with that at all, but also be a strategic partner as well.
Well, you said about well, first of all, it's kind of like the line workers on the shop floor. All of a sudden, there's a new widget to put in such and such place, and you want us to put that there now? Are you kidding me? Yeah, do it.
Yeah.
That's you want to get away from that sort of top down or
Well,
sort
that's
of
the whole Toyota model and why they really had a huge amount of success is they said, "Hey, the folks closest to the work are the ones who know the most. So let's learn from them."
That's right. That's right. Absolutely. I love the automotive analogies. They make sense all so many times. The empathy part is I'm looking at the time and I can't believe it's gone so fast. And we only have a few more minutes here, but I do want to just you said a couple things that were super interesting and relevant and pertinent. This idea of empathy, 360 Insights, we're always interested in just looking at the technology buying software, enterprise software buying process today. It's so much different than it was 15 years ago.
Extremely.
This is old hat, everyone knows it's not driven by IT anymore, obviously. They do still have a say, right? They
Mhm.
are one stakeholder, but you have so many stakeholders. You described a few minutes ago this idea that, the recruiting team or the talent acquisition team they'd be really jazzed about this. Wow, we're going to have this new system in place. We really want this. We're so excited. And they have their own reasons for that. And one of them is, let's be frank, they're just kind of they don't want to deal with the administrative tedium or just re-entering things all the time or
Right.
opening different systems and all that. But that empathy piece seems to me to be I don't think it's too touchy-feely. I think it's absolutely essential. If you have so many stakeholders involved in the technology decision-making process today, you need to understand, you need to have sort of a conception of what the CFO is interested in, and the CFO has to have a conception of what the talent acquisition team has in mind.
Exactly.
And so to have a technology in place, a software that actually enables the recruiting team to deliver higher level value to the organization seems to me to be a good move in that direction. I was having a conversation recently with an HR VP of HR operations at a global asset management firm, and he's all about the HR technologist, right?
Mhm.
It- And I would say maybe the TA technologist as well, having a
Mhm.
real good understanding of that technology so that you can explain the need to those stakeholders in the organization, and then obviously get the most out of the solution as well.
100%. Yeah. And I think, the concept of empathy is something that it goes deep in our organization. It's actually a cultural value. We have a cultural value which is about championing cross-functional empathy. And the reason we in particular talk about that, it's very connected to this idea of both ourselves being more successful as well as helping our customers to be more
Mhm.
successful. Because what we've seen is that when recruiters and hiring managers, folks on the interviewing team, folks on the finance team, folks on the HR team, they all really embrace that they're all part of what makes that company really exceptional at being able to hire. A recruiter might be the one who develops a really deep and meaningful relationship with a candidate who's particularly important to that organization and becomes their advocate in the process. A hiring manager might be the person who can best really sell the opportunity, say like this is why you want to join this organization. Maybe they'll even be reporting to that person, so building that relationship as kind of a report and manager. and being able to describe the opportunity of the company and the opportunity of that particular role and career path. The interviewing team, of course, contributes a lot to making the right decision. Can also help to bring in more diversity into the process, which can really help to build affinity and a sense of belonging and inclusion with a wider variety of folks. So it's a really important part of building diverse teams, which is another really important topic. So when you think about all the different roles that the different folks play, they're all critical. And what we've seen is that one of the simplest, and again, back to basics, one of the simplest but most effective ways that teams can get better at hiring is honestly to just build a lot of trust and great relationships among those folks.
Mm.
If the recruiter understands the value that the hiring manager brings and trust them and wants to work with them, and vice versa, if the hiring manager loves working with that recruiter, you're going to get better at hiring.
Yeah.
So take the time to like build those relationships, build that understanding, is something we really advocate for. And it's part of every step. It's part of the buying process. It's part of continuing to get buy-in to the goals over time. And it's part of just frankly being really good at hiring at the
Yeah.
end of the day.
And give them a tool, a software, a technological tool that enables them to maximize that synergy between those people.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, we always say it's a lot harder to build software that feels human, that feels like it helps you to be human instead of feels like you're bowing down to the robots.
Right.
So we think about that a lot. Is when we think about how we design features, what patterns to make the defaults. We really encourage collaboration, engagement. Recruiters shouldn't be spending their time going to hiring managers and trying to get them to submit feedback. That's silly.
Right.
The tool should take care of
Yeah, yeah, really.
that.
You
So
mentioned
go ahead.
the robots, and we don't have enough time, but that really is one of my favorite topics. Is the robots or the AI and
Yeah.
what its role is going to be in the future work. Maybe that can be our next conversation,
Maybe
Nate.
that could be our next conversation. I think there is a role as long as we keep the human relationships at the heart of it.
Agreed. Agreed. Well, thank you so much, Nate. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you, Brent. It was amazing to chat and looking forward to the next one.
Awesome. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks, you too.